this video, I'm building a mini roundabout. Technically it's like two mini roundabouts, but with an island that goes through the middle. Now I'm not 100% sure on the name for this at all, so if any of you know the name of this sort of junction slash intersection, I'd like to know, because it's not a typical like mini roundabout design that you would see in the UK, but it's not unheard of for this to be around. This one is in Milton Keynes, in sort of a industrial retail complex. So I thought I'd just give it a go at designing it and trying to make it look as realistic as possible. The only problem is I find when I build these small junctions is I want it to be a fairly fast build, a fairly quick build. But I just end up putting so much detail and finesse into it. Every time I open the game, I realise a new technique or an old technique that other people have used that I've just now discovering to use that just makes it look so much more realistic, but also takes so much more time. So originally with this design I was going to use normal roads, but then I realised that I wasn't going to be able to get the look I wanted to with the mini roundabout, because there would be then an island that would be made from the game's curves that wouldn't really fit what I wanted. So I ended up having to use highway roads, and that means pretty much you have to do everything yourself. You have to do all the lane markings, you have to do all the curbs. So that just added to the more of the hassle of building this. But in the end, it actually turned out rather nice, and there's a couple things that are a bit iffy, but I sort of tweaked in a way that you can't see them, and it's really hard to see that there is an issue there. I mean, some of the lanes are a bit off and a bit skewed, and some of the lanes there should have been 3 lanes where I accidentally only did 2, so it didn't really fit correctly with where the cars were going. But you very infrequently saw that happening, and most of the cars would behave sort of typical to what they would in a mini roundabout. There is a few lanes where the cars just do these weird things where they take really wide turns and then really sharp turns, but that's just how City Skylines works, with the way that the cars follow their set paths on the road. It would be possible to get them to take a more smooth line, but then that would involve a ton of road clipping, and the problem when you clip roads together so close to one another, even with the mods and even with allowing cars to enter a junction, this just creates slowdown. The cars have to pass through several junctions, and I guess it's quite, like, not taxing, but difficult for the car to work out where it has to go, so it has to keep calculating, and it just ends up slowing down, which sucks a bit. So here's the mini roundabout design in the middle that I start with. I end up tweaking it and adding another mini roundabout like prop to make a sort of beveled, is it beveled edge, or is it like a slight curve that raises up so that if trucks clip the mini roundabout, they will easily be able to drive over the top. So I am creating the middle island sort of thing for the second sort of stretch after the mini roundabout, and I just use curb props. I ended up using these different curb props. Normally I use Ronix's. I just wanted to try these just to get a different look, because Ronix's have a very particular look, and I find that I've used them a lot, so I'm getting a bit bored of using them. But I do end up using his for certain things, because those ones that I'm using conform to the terrain. And I end up putting a pedestrian underpass underneath the road. So that means that these conform to the terrain and sunk in, so I had to use Ronix's to sort of bridge the gap between them, which ended up looking okay, because they got a different look. And I'm trying to not use the same things everywhere, trying to get a different feel, a different look for different sections, which is a bit of a pain because it does mean a lot more work, a lot more looking for props. But in the end, I feel like it can work out quite nice because it can make it look more realistic. Because if you look in the real world, not all curbs are the same. Not all curbs are the same heights. There's a lot of damaged curbs. There's a lot of just different things that don't really fit and would look semi out of place in City Skylines unless done right. I'm not sure I can do it right yet. I'm still trying to tweak and work things out as I go. So here I am, just basically finishing up some of the line work for the junction, some of the giveaway lines, and some of the lines that can control where people drive. Basically, it's a normal basic roundabout layout. There are these dash lines which indicate that you must give way. Sometimes there is a triangle, but on this one, in real life, there isn't one, so I didn't bother putting it there. I felt like it didn't fit, because if it wasn't there in real life, there must be a reason. Maybe they've worn out. A lot of the road markings in this one in real life are very worn out, and it was hard to view some of where the lines were, but I tried my best, and it works okay. So since I've got a lot of clipping going on with the roads, I end up using Ronix's ploppable asphalt to cover up the places where the road is clipping together to make it look more realistic. But obviously I've got to draw, before I do the covering, I have to draw where the lines are, otherwise I'm not going to know where to put the lines. So the best way to do it is to draw the lines over the existing lines and then cover it up with his asphalt, and it ends up looking quite nice in the end. So there I was, just allowing cars to enter the junction. I end up turning that on for the whole map because it wasn't really working correctly, so I just ended up turning that on for the entire map, which is what I do with most of my builds. I turn on the allow to enter junctions. It just helps. It does make the mini roundabout not work occasionally, which at the end of the video I have a cinematic of the traffic, high volumes of traffic. It doesn't work for high volumes. It barely works for like medium traffic. Just the way that the game doesn't handle mini roundabouts very well, or roundabouts in general. It's very hard to get cars to give way correctly. You could, I guess, do it with a very simple roundabout, but since there are so many nodes so close to one another, the cars just don't know what to do and end up cutting in or giving way on the roundabout when they shouldn't be. But it's just how it is, it's just how the game works, which is a shame. It would be nice if it could work correctly, but we try our best. So I'm using the UK road arrows, and these are from a pack that have been on the workshop for quite a long time. That's why I'm deciding to do this more UK style build, because I saw the big pack that was added onto the workshop and I thought I'd give it a go, adding some UK style roads. And I do like building the different types of roads. They do fit in very nicely. So, to do the middle islands, what I ended up using is procedural objects. Now, I have used procedural objects in the past. There's been a couple updates since I last used them. There was also an update today, which allowed you to select multiple objects, but I'm using the older one. So, I use Sparks's. They're like concrete props, but they act like Ronix's ploppable asphalt, where you can put decals on top of them, and they actually stretch quite nicely. The texture, when you pull it, doesn't look too off, so you can stretch them into these strange island shapes and create an island out of these different like shapes, because it was very hard to fill in these gaps with previous ploppable asphalt or Ronix's like pavements. Like there wasn't enough shapes to fill the really weird angles and curves like this one. So I filled it all in, and now I'm looking at doing the other ones. I tried to use a decal because I thought maybe you could resize decals, but you can change the shape of decals, I found, but they don't seem to change in the way that you want them to. Like if you drag a corner from a decal, it will just make the opposite corner like disappear at points. So I found that decals are a bit finicky, and props are the way to go if you want to make these sort of islands. I did try and use King Leno's cement props, which conform to the terrain, but I found that those can't be turned into procedural objects, probably because they conform to the terrain, and procedural objects doesn't like that. They would be nice because they have a very nice texture to them, the cement like medians, but it's what it is. These from Sparks are very nice and look very realistic. So I used some ploppable grass just to get the general idea of where this grass is going to be, and fill in this median, hopefully with entirely just grass in the end. The grass is obviously easier to use, it's a lot smaller, I don't have to tweak every individual vertice to make it fit, so it's very nice. So as you saw there, you can obviously resize decals. What I did was use the existing mini roundabout decal, just ups the size, because I found that the arrows were way too close to the middle, and I simply upped the size of the decal to make it fit. And it looked quite nice in the end, it fit in very nice. So here I am designing a crossing. Now, as I said before, I turned the decal into procedural objects, and as you can see, it doesn't really do what you want it to do. I ended up trying to make it fit in this gap, and I just couldn't get it to work. Maybe there is a way that I don't know of how to get the procedural objects to work, but I ended up just simply placing the decal and moving some of the curbs to fit the decal size instead of the other way around. I really like this like pavement. It's the pavement that has the bubbles and stuff on it for people who are visually impaired, and I really like the look of this one, but the only problem is it comes in twos, so when you've got one side you have the other side, and my roads have never fit with this sort of size that it is. I would really like it to be two separate props, or just one prop, because then you could just place one on one side of the road and one on the other, and they could fit literally any side of road instead of just being conformed to this standard size, which I believe is it's probably the 2-lane road, and it just doesn't fit any of my designs I ever do, which sort of sucks because I sort of have to cover up one side and make it look and fit in with the design more. As you can see here, I'm trying to cover it up with all manner of different paths and objects and stuff, and it's just not working. What I ended up going with in the end is King Leno's cement medians to sort of show that this is where the like the crossing is, and it covers up the decal very nicely because they are props. And as you can see there, we skipped ahead massively to where I've done a lot of the detailing around the roundabout, and I'm going on to add the wear and the tyre marks to the road, trying to generally follow where the cars would go, and trying to imagine where there could be more wear from the tyres come onto the road, and maybe some skid marks. Some of the lines don't really work correctly, but they do a fairly nice job. A good way of doing these is to let the simulation run and to just follow where the cars are going, and then you'll get a general idea of where to put these skid marks and where to fill in maybe some wear or some holes in the road. some cracks where cars would have been driving over quite a heavy amount of use. So that's pretty much it for the video. Remember, at the end of the video there is a nice cinematic of how this handles heavy traffic. Just FYI, it doesn't handle heavy traffic at all. So that's all for today. Hope you enjoyed. I'll see you next time.